math is math, right? And it doesn't lie. And so you should have just done a better job explaining and educating. And again, I've said it to you before. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we enjoy working with you, because we don't have any issues with any of the transactions.
Hey guys, Darren Sugiyama here, CEO and founder of Lionsmark Capital, the most transparent premium financing intermediary firm in the life insurance industry. So on today's webinar, we have a very special guest, Renee Stuyvesant, who runs the premium financing lender Life Direct. Renee's been a great business partner of mine for several years now and has become a really great friend as well. So we hope you enjoy our interaction as I interview the head of Life Direct, Renee Stuyvesant.
So my career in premium finance started truly in the early days of the industry, back in 2000, when there really were two lenders in the market at that point in time. It was AI Credit and it was ING Finance. And at that time, I was the CEO for ING's banking business in the US. And at the request of our insurance colleagues, we looked into setting up a premium finance lending entity. And very few of us knew what it was. And so we had a very large producer who did international premium finance. And so he decided to take me on 3 separate trips to Japan, and showed me how it was done, and explained me in the process on what premium finance is all about. And we got really intrigued and thought it would be a great opportunity to develop in the US. And so we launched at that time ING Finance, and started doing premium finance exclusively for ING products, because that's what the company wanted to do. But that really was my first experience with premium finance. And later on, after ING days, a few partners and I set up a premium finance boutique, or it was more of an insurance investment banking boutique, where we did premium finance. We did all sorts of capital markets type transactions. We did investment banking transactions for insurance companies, so-called triple X transactions, but certainly a large part of the business was premium finance. And we really liked that business. We ended up doing something with American General, who at that point in time launched the first indexed universal life product, and so we partnered with them and went on an almost 1-year roadshow where we introduced the concept of indexed universal life policies, which was a completely novel product at that time, and because there you had the investment element, and at the same time it was still considered an insurance product rather than a securities product. So it was a very interesting time, and we sold that business in 2010. I took a 8-year hiatus, running a financial technology firm out of Southern California. We sold that in 2018. I knew the people at Bank Direct really well, and they were looking to add life insurance premium finance to their existing property and casualty premium finance business. And so we looked at the market. I thought it was a great opportunity for a lender that did certain things differently than the general market practice back in 2018. They asked if I wanted to join and execute on the business plan. And 6 years later, here we are. And I think running a very successful premium finance business, I certainly think it's the fastest growing at this point in time, and having a ton of fun doing it.
That's awesome. So you're actually one of the founding fathers of premium finance life insurance, if you break down the timeline, yeah?
I I think so. Yeah, it's certainly aging myself here. But yes, but yeah, we certainly were the second lender. So we were there at the times when it was truly a wild west. I mean, we were forming an industry, and with all the good things that go with it and all the bad things that go with it. And so there are plenty of stories to go around from that time, and it was certainly interesting to be at sort of the embryonic stage of what now is a pretty significant industry. And yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, but ballpark, what year was that? Just kind of rough estimate.
2001.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
it's yeah, so it goes back a bit, and and literally at that time there was no index universal life. You just had general account, universal life, and the attraction really was that it gave producers for the first time the opportunity to talk to their clients about very large life insurance without the need for coming out of pocket and have the opportunity to finance. And so it was interesting because everybody was trying to find their way on how to do it. And so in the early days, we had situations where for example, the illustration software of carriers were not capped at the rates that they could show. And so, sort of the entrepreneurial spirit of many producers came through, and we saw, illustrations at absurd high rates, particularly given that it was, all really general account, fixed income. But by and large, the objective of most was, use of money, best use of money, and where do you spend? We identified that you need insurance. The question now becomes, how do you pay for it? And would you prefer to pay the annual premium of, pick a number, $1 million a year, or is that $1 million, more advantageous for you to have it in your business and you get a higher return, or even sit in an investment account and have a higher return? So
Yeah.
the argument really became use of money, and that obviously, we migrated to a different sales process over the years. But in the early days, it was pretty pure from that standpoint because there was no index universal life. So, you were dealing with borrowing cost of 6 and policy returns of 6. So there was no so-called arbitrage that even entered anybody's mind. And so it was really a very different focus during the sales process.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think that aren't people that aren't in the space. They think that premium financing is some sort of new type of strategy, but you're talking about going back, I mean, almost 3 decades.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the concept is certainly not new, by any stretch of the imagination. The sales process has changed, and it has brought a lot of new agents into the market. We're coming out of what I would call a Cinderella period, where you had very low interest rates, and you had very high returns in the market. And so all of a sudden, it opened the doors to a lot of producers who had previously, for a variety of reasons, not been engaged in the premium finance business. And now all of a sudden, they saw an opportunity where your borrowing cost all in was 3.5, maybe 4% at the most, right? And you had 10, 12, 14, 16% return in the policies. And so the dynamic in the sales process changed. It changed from where do you prefer to spend the $1 million inside the insurance contract or inside your business? It became now a different sales angle, and the sales angle started to migrate more and more to, hey, I have an investment product for you where you pay 3.5% to borrow, and you're going to make 10%. You do that for a number of years. The policy is now so much worth. You pull the money out of the policy, pay off the loan, and you have free insurance, right? And so a lot of people jumped on that bandwagon, and then 22, 23 happened, and a lot of people came off that bandwagon at a high cost to producers and clients alike.
Yeah. I mean, tell me what your take is on this. I almost kind of equate that to like real estate investment using a mortgage loan, right? If you thought that the only reason to buy real estate was to get the arbitrage, to me that's
Right,
not really the purpose. It's really more you got to live somewhere, right? You
right,
have to have,
right,
assuming you have to have
right,
life insurance, or your family
right,
needs life insurance, or your estate needs life insurance. I look at the arbitrage being more so of parking your money elsewhere, whether it's in your business, working capital, expand your business, or in
yeah,
some more aggressive exotic investment, and then use the bank capital to fund your life insurance policy, as opposed to, as you put it, kind of the arbitrage game. You brought up the term free insurance, and I've seen several programs out there start to come back. Even though rates are high and the arbitrage isn't there, I'm seeing proposals where the financier is essentially cheating the borrowing rate and setting it artificially low so that they get that built-in arbitrage in their pretty little Excel spreadsheet. I'm
Right.
not a fan of that. What's your take on that? What's Life Direct's take on that?
Yeah, I mean, we do see that. I mean, we obviously do not get involved in the sales process, but we vigorously, interview agents that we don't know, that we don't have a history with, to understand what their sales process is, and it's revealing at times, and we see a lot of client complaints against producers, and in the discovery process, you see certain information, and you sort of wonder what how do you think this would have worked? Yeah? And not that long ago, I saw a sales presentation that the client ultimately used as a motivation to transact. And it was, if memory serves me, it was like 2.95 interest for life. Capitalized the interest, and policy returns that were unattainably high. And so to a degree, you can ask, why does this client believe that that is a realistic scenario? But ultimately, I think as an industry, it is incumbent on us to have a fair sales process and a transparent sales process. And at the end of the day, in my mind, speaking on behalf of Life Direct, I mean, the better the client is educated, the more long-term success you will have with the transaction. And so you see those unrealistic transactions being presented, and you just know it's a disaster waiting to happen, right? Because now all of a sudden, and it goes into the whole issue there as well of a lot of people sort of, even if they when they do the presentation, they forget that the crediting doesn't take place in month 12.
Yeah, right.
And right, and
Right.
and so you have that issue that you need to deal with,
Which
and
affects the
and you know
collateral, right?
yeah, I mean, it's because you're going to get to year 2 or year 3 or whatever year in the process. And, and a client really, if you start a transaction, realistically, there is almost 2 years of no return. Because when you renew after that first year, there hasn't been no return. So there's nothing to calculate. And, and it's practices like that I wish as an industry we could safeguard against. But obviously, we can't, other than pointing out the issues, and as a consequence, we have seen a mass exodus from transactions, in starting in late 2022 and going through all of 23, where people said, "Oh, hold on, what do you mean I have to come up with more collateral? And you showed me this, and the reality is so very different, and this is not what I bargained for." So, as a consequence, a lot of surrenders, a lot of people walking away from transactions, a spike in client complaints against producers that just, sort of quote unquote sold an unrealistic deal. And I think as an industry, we're at risk of walking into a black eye over practices like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in our proposal software, kind of like what you said, we assume 2 zeros before we're calculating the collateral.
Yeah.
I've even had some advisors come to me with one of my competitors' proposals and said, "Well, how come your program requires so much more collateral than this other guy's?" And it's like, mine doesn't require more collateral. My collateral I'm showing is the actual mathematical truth of what the lender is going to require. This other guy
Right.
is cheating the system, and they're taking advantage of, or they're assuming that the policy is going to get those 2 index credits that's going to factor into the collateral. And that's not, as you said, when the lender calculates the collateral, they don't calculate the end of year credit at the
Right.
upcoming year, as well as the future year that the lender is looking to fund. So I
Right.
can't tell you how many proposals I've seen where the collateral calculation is literally mathematically incorrect.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
why I see so many of these cases with some of my competitors going sideways is the client didn't expect to get that big a collateral call.
Right.
And it
Right.
wasn't that the policy didn't perform. It wasn't that the interest rates rose. It was because the proposal was mathematically incorrect from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have
Yeah.
you
I
seen
mean, you
have you
set it
seen
up
that
to
as much as
fail.
I've seen that?
Yeah, I mean, you in situations like that, you just set it up to fail, right? And and that's unhealthy. I mean, as a lender, we don't like to see deals run off the books, right? I mean, it's a certain amount of work. You allocate capital, you allocate people to do transactions, and if you then find out that a transaction after a couple of years runs off the books because at the end of the day that was not exactly what the client had expected, that's not a win for anybody. And I think it's all about client education at the end of the day. And, nobody likes to make the extra collateral call. I mean, nobody enjoys that. But if the client is sort of prepared for it, as at least is aware of the possibility that that may happen, it makes the whole conversation, very different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you have to call the client and say, I need X amount of additional collateral, and deep down inside that that's not something you have really discussed with the client, or maybe have touched upon but didn't educate, which are two different things. And that's a much more difficult call to make, right? Because deep down inside, you're going to surprise the client, and it's an unpleasant surprise, and nobody likes unpleasant surprises. So I think it's a mindset. I mean, the number of producers who ask us, well, can you not do this or can you do that in order to soften the blow? No, I mean, math is math, right? And it doesn't lie. And so you should have just done a better job explaining and educating. And again, I've said it to you before. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we enjoy working with you, because we don't have any issues with any of the transactions, because clients know what to expect. They're educated, and that behooves all of us.
Yeah, I love that terminology you used, educating versus touching upon. It's kind of like if you're going to have a brain surgeon operate on you, do you want a brain surgeon that was properly and formally educated in being a brain surgeon, or do you want someone that watched a YouTube video that touched upon the process of operating on someone's brain? I mean, that's such a
Right.
great analogy and phraseology there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you seen Lionsmark Capital do differently than others, that you would categorize as, I don't know, doing it the right way versus doing it the wrong way?
Yeah, I come back to the educational part. It's and I think it obviously has a lot to do with your background and the way you look at business in general, from that standpoint. But you educate. You really take people through the process, and you highlight the risks in the transaction, and tell people how they can be mitigated. So people go into it with their eyes wide open, and the amount of time you spend not just communicating, person to person, but also the supporting materials that you have available, where you can show people like, hey, I ran this many scenarios, and that's where it comes out. And I think there are few people that I know who go to that depth and length of the process leading up to a client saying yay or nay. And so it's a much more balanced process, which, needless to say, from where we are sitting, is something that we highly applaud.
No, thank you. Why do you think that's not the standard? Because to me, this is the most important thing for a client that's going to borrow, 7, 8 figures of premium. It seems insane to me that so many clients don't really know what they're getting themselves into. Why do you think that educational piece is missing in our industry as a whole?
I think as a whole, I mean, let me take a half a step back. I think at the fundamental root of a lot of it is the way the industry compensates people, right? So it is heavily front loaded by and large. And I completely understand that the producers, need the commission check to earn a living. I totally get that. And so the moment that you have a sale dangling in front of you with a huge commission check, and you sort of develop tunnel vision, right? And the only thing you want to get to is that carrot of the big commission check, and anything along the way, sort of. It's like a running back, right? I mean, he sees the end zone. He knows that he's gonna get the bonus for his 50th touchdown of the year, and anything along the way, it just gets moved out, right? Because there's only one objective, which is get to that end zone. And um, and I, I I think that a lot of producers lose sight of the field around them, and let alone bring up the possibility that more collateral may be needed, or that there may be, in the years that the deal is in force, that there will be periods where the deal doesn't perform as well, and they feel that they themselves would create impediments to the ultimate objective is making the sale. And I think that sort of leads to a tunnel vision that precludes for a lot of people the willingness to talk about the risks in the transaction. And again, I understand the motivation. I will never fault anybody for that. But I think if you look a little bit further than just a commission check, and you want to keep the money, and don't deal with chargebacks and all of that, you want to make sure that that deal stays on the books for a long time, right? Because that's not only the client's benefit, but your personal benefit as well. And I think giving yourself the best chance of having a deal that has persistency, you need to go through that process. And if it delays or even ends up a deal not happening, you're better off than at all cost getting to the finish line and collecting the check. And I think that's different philosophy. And again, I'm not passing judgment because I understand the motivation. But just stepping back and looking at it a little bit more theoretical, I think that's sort of the root problem of what we are facing in the lack of education of clients.
Yeah, I will pass judgment. I'm probably not as I don't know what the word is, but I'm not as I guess non-judgmental as you. I'm very judgmental when it comes to this because you're talking about ethics and honor, right? And you're talking about the damage that you could do to the client. I mean, these are not. It's not just a few bucks. I mean, the client has millions and millions of dollars at stake here, and when an advisor or a premium financier or whoever gets greedy, and the only reason they're in it is for the money, is for the commission check. I mean, that's I heard this great analogy talking about lending. They said if you're going to buy a house, you can borrow the money and get out in 30 years, or you can rob the bank and get out of prison in 10. It's like, okay, robbing a bank ethically, right? Even though you're out in 10, it's not doesn't mean it's better, right? So it's the same thing with the advisor omitting these very important components in premium financing from the client because they think they're going to get an easier sale and make a commission.
Right.
Even if that was true, it's still wrong, right?
Right.
What I have found is that let's just we never put ethics aside, but let's just say for someone that wants to put ethics aside for whatever insane selfish reason, I have found that the client appreciates what they're actually getting if the education is there. And if anything, my experience is that more clients want to move forward with the transaction when they fully understand what it is that they're getting, when the education is there. And I think a lot of advisors have this misperception that too much detail is going to kill the sale. And that's
Right.
only true if that detail isn't articulated in an easy to understand way, right? So it's the teacher. I mean, we've all had professors and even teachers in high school and such, and some teachers they're teaching the same content, but the students don't get it. And it's not because of the content, it's because of the quality of the teacher. So as an educator, formal educator, former educator, and I suppose I'm still an educator, just in a different way now. If the education process is well articulated and is made in a way that is easy for the client to understand, in some ways, the more education, the better. That shouldn't kill the deal. If anything, it should enhance the sales process, and in some cases, even expedite the sales process, which sounds counterintuitive, but that's my experience telling me the exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I think a client who feels that they know enough about the transaction and feel that they are in the driver's seat to make the decision, is ultimately a much better client than a client who, at the end of the day, feels that they're being sold something and agreed to buy it.
Yeah,
I think that it sounds like semantics, but I think there's a fundamental difference between the two.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, what, in your mind, what sets Life Direct apart as a lender from your, other competitors in the market?
Yeah. So when we started the business there, we did a lot of market research. We spoke to a lot of other lenders. We spoke to life insurance companies. We spoke to a lot of producers, and really almost like a focus group, right? And we said, okay, what works, what doesn't work. What are you happy with? What irritates you? What do you think the industry as a whole could do better? I mean, it was a very extensive process that we went through, and I think I can narrow it down to three basic tenets that underpin our business. First and foremost, without a question, is the efficiency, the turnaround time, the time between submitting a transaction and getting it funded. As I said, I had a hiatus where I ran a financial technology firm, and so I'm a very firm believer in automated processes, and so we spend a lot of time boxes and arrows on a whiteboard, and how can we automate, how can we process most efficiently, and we have the incredible luxury to having our own IT development team. So, we build our own system. We have a dedicated IT team of 6 people that do nothing else but continuously development of the system, system enhancements, et cetera, et cetera. And so, because of all of that, we have a portal that all transactions need to be submitted through. And I'll save you all the details what happens when a deal is submitted, but it gets routed through a number of stations, if you will. And as a consequence, the net result of all of that is that if somebody submits a deal to us on, let's say, a Monday, we guarantee that people have documents in hand, loan documents in hand, by Friday of the same week. And I think that turnaround time, is really our biggest competitive differentiator. One of the things we found when we looked at starting this business was that, the business hadn't changed in the way it processed business, and meaning it was still submitted over email with attachments. And the reality is, if you need, for argument's sake, 6 pieces of information to be submitted in order to underwrite the deal, the tendency was that, yes, you get an email and there are 1 or 2 attachments, and the producer says, well, I'm going to work on the rest. Okay, a couple of weeks go by, you don't hear anything, and then you get a call and say, okay, what do I need to send again? And what I already sent you,
Yeah.
right? And then you get another attachment, and that process gets so drawn out. And then at the end of the day, it has taken a couple of months before you have all the information. Then the bank goes through its underwriting process. And then by then, the agent has forgotten that it took him 6 weeks to get all the information. And now there's, oh my goodness, that lender is going to take 3 months before it funds a deal. Yeah, because so we just didn't want to be in that situation. A, because it's reputationally not good. B, it is a lot of wasted time within the organization where people essentially just answering calls and repeating themselves over and over again. So the fact that we have automated this and we have this turnaround time of a week between submitting and getting loan docs, I think is our biggest competitive differentiator. Then there are 2 other things. The second thing is transparency. So anybody who asks gets a pricing sheet from us. And so when you're in the early stages of a deal and you want to know where would the lender come in on pricing, you can literally take a pricing sheet and you know exactly where we're going to price the deal. And that came from that same market research that we did. We asked the question of almost every lender, and we said, if we have a deal that looks like this, how would you price it? What would your terms and conditions be? And without fail, the answer was, well, that depends.
Depends.
Right?
I knew you were going to say that. It depends. Yeah, right. Right.
And, and that to me was a very strange answer, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, we can call ourselves bankers and feel that we are very important and very erudite people and all of that nonsense, right? At the end of the day, we're selling products. The only difference is with many other products, we're selling financial products. And the financial product that we happen to sell is a life insurance premium finance loan, right? And I always make the analogy. If I go, on a Saturday to PetSmart and I buy a bag of dog food and I go to the register and I put that bag down and I say to the person behind the register, how much do I owe you? I don't expect to hear, well, that depends, right?
Right.
I'm buying a product and there's a price for the product.
Right.
So why not tell people, right? So we're very transparent on our pricing, and I think that has helped a lot. And thirdly, it's relationship management. I'm a huge believer in personal relationships, and the fact that probably 85-90% of the people we do business with today, I have known for 20 plus years, and so I'm very relationship driven. And so one of the complaints that we heard a lot was that, well, you always have to wait who picks up the phone on the other side, and I have to tell my story multiple times. They don't know me, they don't know my portfolio, they don't know the deal. And that was considered a big irritant for many producers. And so we don't have that. We allocate specific people to particular producers. A relationship develops. There is knowledge about the portfolio. There's knowledge about the deals. You're always dealing with the same person. And I think that consistency and that relationship element is a critical component of, I think, our success. And so when you put the three together, I think we have a formula that sets us apart from the competition. And it's hard to compete there, and to be honest, because if you look at the business, the last thing you want to do is compete on price, right? I mean, just as a business philosophy, the moment you enter a marketplace with, that is to a degree saturated, right? Then as we all know from business school, if you enter a saturated market, you've got to find a mousetrap. If not, the only thing you can compete with is is pricing, right? And you build no client loyalty with that, because guess what? You're the cheapest this week, but next week, Johnny comes into the market with lower rates, and all your clients go to Johnny because you have added no value to their day-to-day practice. And so our focus has been, from day one, how can we add value to the producer's practice? And if we are able to achieve that, we build up a loyal client base, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, you're so spot on with taking that stance too. And make no mistake, your rates are fantastic, but the rate, I always say the client will forget how, if you saved them, 5, 10, 15, 20 bips on the deal, if their experience is cumbersome and a pain in the butt, right?
Right.
Like you said, the transparency of letting the client know exactly what they're going to get, and then delivering that, and then, as you said, the relationship side of things, so much more important than price. It's so funny because for the most part, at the higher end of the market, no one makes decisions to buy a product based on price, right? You don't decide to get a luxury car instead of an economy car because it's cheaper. You get it because you like it better, the experience is better, all that. So yeah, I think you're so spot on. Anything else you think advisors that are watching this webinar should know about Life Direct? Obviously, they know you're a great partner of ours at Lionsmark. They trust us and they trust you, obviously. But what do you think they need to know, other than transparency, other than the fact that you're very relationship focused, long term focused? Anything else?
No, I think those are the three key takeaways. Then, to be honest, I think our focus is on executing well on all three, and it's oftentimes the little things that count, right? I mean, if you do okay on the big things, but you fall on the small things, the small things start to outweigh the big things, right? And So one of the things, and it may sound silly, but one of the internal rules that we have, that we set for everybody that works on the team, is that an email does not get left unanswered for more than an hour. And so every email gets answered within the hour, and nobody goes home without the last email having been answered. And it sounds like a silly rule, right? And because you may not know the answer within the hour, but the fact that you go back to the producer and say, I received your email, I'm looking into this. This is by when I think I can come back to you, and that's okay. It's okay to not have the answer on the spot, but the fact that you acknowledge that you have received it, that you value the person for having made the inquiry that they made, makes somebody feel good.
Yeah.
The worst thing, one of my pet peeves is when I send an email to somebody and I don't hear back for a couple of hours. It drives me insane,
Yeah.
right? And so it's a personal pet peeve, and because I feel that I'm not important enough to be answered. And it's not an ego thing. I'm the first one to admit I have a huge ego, but that's not an ego thing, right? It's a matter of, do people appreciate my business? Do people appreciate me, trying to have a relationship with somebody? That's the much more fundamental issue. And the moment that you get somebody who submits a deal or has a question about a potential transaction and you don't answer that person, you give that person like the feeling, I'm not important. Whether I give them the deal, not give the deal, doesn't matter to them. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
It's little things like that we may be paying too much attention to, but I think it's those sort of little things that add up at the end of the day.
No, I think that's so important. I don't know if you've ever heard of the study, but they did this study where they took two separate groups and they had them experience this fabricated travel site. So two different sites. One site, when they search for a flight, they just got that little pinwheel thing that rotates around.
Right.
Right. Everyone gets irritated by that. It's like, and the common response was, "What the hell is taking so long? Why is this taking so long?" The other site, as soon as they did the search, you had all these flights. You could see the flights. It's like scroll, like a. If you've ever been to like a train station, even in Europe, right? A train station, all goes. It shows all the trains and the schedule.
Yeah.
So it showed all these different flights. It showed them searching. What was so interesting about the study is that the one where it showed all the flights scrolling actually took longer to find the flight, but the participants in the study preferred that site over the other one that got them a flight in a shorter amount of time. And the reason was they said people liked to see that there was activity, that there was something was working on their behalf, whereas the other one they're just sitting around getting frustrated. And it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, if the client doesn't know or the person doesn't know that you're actually working on their behalf, they think you're out screwing around or you're not important. So even if it took longer, just the fact that you let them know that someone's working on it, I think what you're doing is fantastic.
It's all about client engagement, right? And that's not just at the lending business. I think as a general business philosophy, client engagement is so critical. And make people feel appreciated. There's nobody who I have ever met that says I hate a compliment. I hate that somebody thinks I'm valuable to them. There's nobody. Everybody likes to hear a positive thing. That's just human nature. And so why would we, who are at the end of the day in the relationship business, in the client engagement business, why wouldn't we go out of our way to make people feel appreciated and we engage with them? And it's so fundamental, it's so rudimentary, and still so often neglected. It's surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fun. This is great information. Everyone knows we're big fans of Life Direct over here at Lionsmark Capital. You and your staff have always been a pleasure to work with, and I think the thing that's most important for me to get this message out is that at the end of the day, there's no such thing really as a company. It's a group of people, and it's the relationship that you have with that group of people, and it's the quality of people that you work with from an ethics standpoint, from an honor standpoint. And all I can say is, aside from you being a great businessman and running a great company, the thing that's most important to me, you're a good human being, man. And I really, really value that tremendously.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's continue to kick butt together. And we're going to continue to have a great year together.
I look forward to
All
it.
right. Thanks for being here, Renee.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Take care now. Bye.